Tetris is simple. Granted, all games are simple, especially in the early days of arcades and consoles. This is mainly due because most games just had a limited number of player actions to perform. Mario had run and jump, Asteroids had spin and shoot, Pong had move up and move down. Heck, Pac-Man just had go. So, in Tetris' case, it only had move and rotate. But had some sort of thinking and problem solving you had to put forth in order to give you the best shot at succeeding, but that's not wholly unique. All games have some level of thinking. So, being simple isn't a wholly unique trait to have. But it's in Tetris's unique brand of simplicity where it means a lot to me and how important it actually is to me. Welcome to my review of Tetris. Back in August of 2020, 5 months into me never leaving my apartment again, I was on a podcast, the John Talks podcast.
This time it's a little more fun for Joe and Ted. First, we're going to draft our favorite video games,
in which myself, the host, and the other guests drafted our 4 favorite video games from the late 90s and early 2000s. A rule I am pretty sure, actually not pretty sure, I am for sure, know for a fact that I broke wholesale due to poor reading comprehension on my part. I'm pretty sure half the games I drafted were like late 2000s, maybe even like early 2010s, so whoops. So I've decided to review all 4 games I drafted with little compendium pieces to bridge each game to each other. Now, I don't know what those 3 games are going to be, but that's a future me problem. Let's really focus on the 4 games I'm going to be touching on, which are Tetris, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, Alan Wake, and La Noire, or Los Angeles Noir. With these games, I'm going to be releasing these videos in chronological order, but these supplementary pieces might not be chronologically in line with the other games, but I digress. So that kind of answers an unasked question about why I'm reviewing a game that's old enough to be my sister. Granted, Tetris has a lot of different versions, even though fundamentally the game's still the same. So, once again, welcome to my review of Tetris for the NES, Tetris and Dr. Mario for the SNES, Tetris Friends for the Internet Browser, Tetris Effect for the Sony PlayStation 4, and Tetris 99 for the Nintendo Switch. Tetris is a wildly simple game. Now, that's not just a thesis statement, that's kind of fact. Nintendo wanted it for its Game Boy because it was such a simple game. I'll get into that in a little bit. In Tetris, the point is to create and also subsequently destroy this tower you are creating. You'll get an assortment of 7 pieces coming at you at random. These pieces are tetraminos, 4 squares connected together to make a different shape. You lose when your tower construction stack reaches the topmost of the play area. And in order for this to not happen, despite you being the sole perpetrator of this scenario even happening, you have to destroy some of the lines. And in order to do that, you clear a full row, and that eliminates or destroys or deletes that row from existence, and your tower falls to its lowermost row. To help you, you can move and rotate these pieces to help you create a nice flat play area for you to navigate, though sometimes you'll get a piece that just doesn't quite fit. You'll create a hole, and that can quickly become multiple holes that gum up the systems. So in turn, you have to eliminate your mistakes as quickly as possible to get back to a nice area so you're not panicking when things get a little too tight. And on top of that, you only know one piece that's coming ahead, and that can kind of help you plan or kind of shows you your impending doom. So it comes down to your snap decisions and making the correct calls when things are moving just a little bit too fast. For a game that's so simple, it's incredibly stressful. This is Alexei Leonidovich Pashitnov. He is the man who created Tetris. From then until now, it went through 2 distributors to a lawsuit, all the way to him finally once again retaining the rights to the game he had created. Alexei really only cared about one thing, and that's people enjoying his game, people coming together to play his game or because of his game. He is quoted in saying, "Games allow people to get to know each other better and act as revealers of things you might not normally notice, such as their way of thinking." This is a quote from the book, a French book, I'm assuming. I hope. La Saga des Jeux Vidéo. He got his inspiration from his favorite childhood toy, Pentaminos. Now this is a Katamino. It's using Pentaminos to problem solve a puzzle you kind of create yourself. Kind of the whole process of it, you have these shapes that can kind of come together to make bigger and larger shapes. Pentaminos, as you can guess, are just kind of, 5 squares put together to make a shape, much like the Tetramino. Kataminos, this puzzle thing has ruined my day. I'm screaming at a child's toy because the hardest most puzzle in a set, I get so mad because I think I almost got it, and then it's a shape I need that I can't use because it's not one of the selected pieces for this puzzle. It's incredibly annoying despite the fact that they say there are many ways to solve each puzzle, but I really don't think that's entirely true. It's incredibly annoying. Pashitnov simplified the number of shapes, saying as he wanted these pieces to come in at random, and he thought 12 pieces was far too daunting of a task for people to deal with, so he cut it down to just 7. He also made these Tetraminos, as I said, 4 squares to make a shape. The name Tetris comes from tetra, meaning 4, obviously, as you can guess, and his favorite sport, tennis, but really he just took is and slapped it at the end of tetra. So really, knowing it comes from tennis is a very hard thing to figure out. Since it was originally developed for a computer, the limitations graphically were incredibly small. He was forced to use brackets to create the squares and thereby create the shapes. Once he showed it to his friends, they quickly became obsessed with the game. There was no levels or scoring system in this first iteration of Tetris. To say Tetris has levels is a misnomer? Really? It doesn't have levels. It has just increasing difficulty. It's more of a curve than progression. You'll never get better. You'll kind of always be stuck where you are unless you kind of just get smarter. And you learn literal tricks that weren't invented until 5 years ago. I guess you could say Tetris Effect is levels, but those are more stages and they really only change aesthetically. They don't add any more difficulty. They do have puzzle boards. That's the one that Tetris at Barcade has. Did you know that there was a arcade version of Tetris? I didn't learn that until I was in college and I went to a Barcade and I was like, oh, they got Tetris. And I had the high score for a year on that machine. And then I left and my score got erased because they moved the machine and they unplugged it. So I lost my score. But yeah, they had puzzles. They had things that would gum up and you would have to kind of play around it and eliminate those to get a nice feel. I would beat my friends at the arcade version a lot. Once released commercially in Russia, it was a success, much to the chagrin of his employers, because Pashitnov was part of the research department, and his employers were mad that the department of where they work was mad that they were successful, which is insane to think about. You should just be happy anyone's having success, really, at the end of the day. Get that bread, Though that didn't stop Tetris from finally making his way out of Russia and into Hungary, where it was distributed there mainly to really Hungary and Russia, and eventually making its way to Poland. A British man by the name of Rob Stein was in Hungary, saw a trailer for Tetris, and, like everyone else who played it before him, was obsessed. He wanted to release the game worldwide, or mainly to Europe and America, and would eventually sell the rights to 2 distributors who sell it in those areas respectively, though he technically didn't have a contract at that time. Him and Pashitnov came to an agreement, though in Russia they weren't sure if a contract was legally binding via fax, so he technically sold a game he didn't have. Also, selling a game like Tetris was incredibly difficult, you'd imagine, because of its Russian ties, because the Red Scare and all that. Granted, like, the funny thing is, like, hey, communism's back, baby, and it's hornier than ever. I remember one time in the place I used to work, this guy was like, when did communist paraphernalia become, like, in vogue for fashion? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I was on a subway and a girl was wearing, like, a communism patch. And I was like, well, have you heard the national anthem? It slaps. And then I played the USSR national anthem in my office. But when you really think about it, a national anthem for the USSR is super weird. It's very funny. Still, despite the Red Scare, it was still a commercial success, both in Europe and America, even with its Russian architecture and its Russian-inspired music still heavily present in the game. But granted, I guess they went around this by saying, especially in the US, that Tetris was made in the US, designed abroad, which is deceitful because Pajitnov was not mentioned anywhere as the creator of the game or anything about this, mainly because they didn't even know he had made the game. As I said, Stein technically sold a game he didn't have the rights to, so he quickly flew to Russia to get a contract sorted. He ended up conceding 80% of the profits, though. I think he kept everything up to that point to himself because I don't think Pajitnov knew the game was even being sold worldwide at that time. Though, once he did learn, he wasn't mad or angry. He was just happy people were playing his game. An incredibly humble note for someone legitimately stealing something you owned, something you created, and the money that was rightfully yours. Later on, the European distributor for Tetris, Mirrorsoft, sold its Japanese rights to Atari, who then sold the arcade rights to Sega, and the console rights to BPS, which led to Tengen, which is an Atari subsidiary. This is how Tetris found its way into being on the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. At that time, Nintendo was gearing up to release its portable game system, the Game Boy, and they wanted Tetris to be a release title. This was because the game was incredibly simple, and also it was commercially a success for the NES. This led to Nintendo wanting to retain rights for the console releases of Tetris, and them and Mirrorsoft both heading out to Russia to battle it out for ownership of profits for a game made in Russia, communist Russia. That's incredibly funny that these companies were fighting over contracts for a game made in communist Russia. That's hilarious that capitalism found its way into Russia. And like the biggest capitalist pig, Nintendo, was there. These two companies trying to get this contract signed in favor of them, Pajitnov inevitably sided with Nintendo. Nintendo conceded computer rights to Mirrorsoft while they would own pure console sales. Though Mirrorsoft wasn't fully aware of that deal, when the contract was signed, Rob Stein was blinded by the money and didn't realize he was losing the right to a console version that was incredibly successful on the NES. This led to Nintendo signing a cease and desist order when Tengen, Atari, Mirrorsoft was still selling its NES version of the game. Mirrorsoft, they threatened legal action, and Mirrorsoft was actually so terrified of this lawsuit that they contacted Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev to cancel the contract. They said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear up that contract. And they did it. And so they went to court over this. The argument that Atari had come up with was that technically the Famicom, or the NES, was a family computer. Once the courts didn't still side with them, surprisingly, they withdrew from the case and pulled all versions of Tetris they had made for the NES. If you actually have this version of Tetris, the one made by Tengen, by Atari, by Mirrorsoft, it's not a rare game, it's an illegal game. You shouldn't technically own that game because you shouldn't have it in the first place. Even this one, this is a facsimile of the game because Tengen had very unique ways of producing their games, which is with all black cartridges and rounded edges. This is obviously fake. If I put this in an NES, it wouldn't work. In 1996, Pajitnov emigrated to the US, and at that same time, the original 10-year agreement he had signed with the Russian government for the rights of Tetris, when the deal they subsequently signed with Rob Stein and Nintendo ran out at that time. And after 10 years of its release, Pajitnov finally owned the game he lovingly created, and forming the Tetris company to oversee the developments of future games. For a game that's so mind-numbingly simple, the Tetris history is incredibly complicated. Now, funny enough, that legal version of Tetris for the NES was the first game I ever played. And if my mother could find the copy at my grandparents' house, or if maybe my grandfather didn't give away the NES, I would have that copy right here to proudly show to you that, yes, this is the first game I played that I've spent a lot of time in. It is some of my earliest memories and some of my latest memories. I wish I could do that. My mom was very sad that she couldn't give me that copy of Tetris that I so desired, but that's fine. It wasn't incredibly important. It's not the linchpin of this video. I don't really care. I just kind of wish I had it to kind of show to you the game I loved so much. Also, it says in my script that they still have their NES to this day. No, they don't. The NES version of Tetris, granted, a lot of early versions of Tetris are very difficult to play because a lot of rotations you can do aren't really viable now due to its limited coding or just improper coding. If you try to rotate a piece and it's hugging the left wall, you actually can't do it unless it's occupying a space that doesn't exist. The way Tetris pieces rotate is that it'll always rotate to fill the leftmost columns. But because obviously, since you're up against the wall, it's not going to push out and you can't make more space because the game doesn't understand that. You have to at least leave as much space as you can to rotate properly. This means you have to plan your rotations and moves accordingly. And on top of that, the pieces snap to the game board incredibly quickly, almost instantaneously. The second it makes contact with that next piece, it's stuck there. It's hard, stuck, you can't move around. Where in newer Tetris, it gives you time to kind of move around and finagle a proper position that you want it to. Really, the safest and best way to play Tetris was to have a Tetris, which is using the I block, or the straight line piece, to eliminate 4 lines, the maximum number of lines you can eliminate for both most points and easy removal of lines. On top of that, the music in Tetris is so iconic, music A, but that's because also so many other games' musics were also just as iconic because they were made specifically for those games. Nowadays, I'm pretty sure most games are just licensed music, unless it's like incredibly specific, the game, like Witcher 3 had like its own music made. Now you kind of get like top 50s, like you have that in like the NBA games, NFL, the Madden games. Even Cyberpunk had like licensed music, which is insane. Death Stranding had a licensed song. It had like a Traverse song. Granted, that song was called Death Stranding, and I guess they made that specifically for the game, but a real band made that game that you could hear on the radio, is what I'm really saying. I mean, Tony Hawk's technically licensed music too, but that music's not popular music. It's very specific and fits the mood of, or not the mood, but the atmosphere the game's trying to build. I'm going to get into that later, obviously, because Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 is the third game in this series review hodgepodge season of videos. But what makes the music so much better is that when you make your stack just a little bit too high, the music gets a little bit faster and a little bit more stressful. The music is telling you, it is warning you,
hey, you better pick it up, guy, or we about to shuffle off the buffalo, bud.
Whenever I am back home and we are visiting my grandmother, I find myself playing Tetris at some point during the trip because that's just naturally where I would put myself. Now, I love my family and subsequently my extended family a lot. I'm very lucky, and I understand how lucky I am to have a family that is very understanding and very supportive of everything that we do as, the next generation, their, family still. and they get along very well. We never really have any true big arguments. But one of my biggest points of weakness is that whenever I am with them, I never feel like I have anything to contribute to the conversations. I feel like whatever they're talking about is something I can never add to, and it makes me feel incredibly out of place and awkward. And on top of that, I feel the need to excuse myself from that room, even without saying anything, because I feel like it's ruder to be disconnected from that conversation whilst in the room just on my phone. So I go to a different room and play Tetris. So to say it, to me at least, it is less rude to be in a completely different room, technically isolated from everyone, setting up the NES and playing Tetris by myself. This is even with the availability of Tetris on your phone, your tablet, my Switch, but for some reason I fall back to playing it on the SNES, a version that I've played for most of my life without the use of a hold piece. In 1999, the new Tetris came out. This is a version I never played up until the research portion of this video because I needed footage of this game, because I have learned that this is the first instance of the hold piece. This is the introduction of the hold piece. The hold piece is a mechanic in which you can save a piece for later. You input the button and it gets saved into the top left of the game. You know what that piece is and you can use it whenever you see fit. Usually you can use it for a Tetris just to save that I piece for a Tetris to eliminate 4 blocks at an easy convenience, or you can save a problematic piece that you don't really know what to do with, but you have another piece that you can easily put somewhere. This eliminated the early strategy from the NES version and the SNES version, in which you created a double well. Double well is when you leave one column open as your first well, where you can put your Tetris long boy in for that Tetris, and then you leave your next column a little bit lower than the rest of your tower, so you can slot in awkward pieces for easy line skimming, and you still leave that well open for the Tetris. However you used the whole piece was just up to you, whatever felt right, however flow state you were in whilst you were playing Tetris. It wasn't beholden to any specific way, just whatever made sense to you. I like to save the T piece in the hold piece because it is a incredibly flexible piece, and having that available when you kind of can't do anything with the current piece, it's a very nice out card to have. The hold piece is now a vital mechanic of modern day Tetris, though it is often something I kind of do forget I have the option to use because I'm so ingrained in Tetris for the NES. This is mainly because my brain's so teeny tiny and smooth that I kind of just forget that it's even there. And even when I do remember it, I'm just swapping willy-nilly and just screwing myself up because I forget what's there and what I just done. It's kind of a mess whenever I use the whole piece. That's more of a me problem though. So I only focus on one piece ahead at a time because that's what Tetris for the NES has trained me. And honestly, playing Tetris without a hold piece is incredibly exhilarating. If you think sex rules, try playing Tetris without the use of a hold piece. One of my biggest insecurities is that my friends and family don't actually like me. They merely tolerate me to the best of their abilities because they might feel that they're stuck with me. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. I mean, they have to, because we're all insecure to an extent. And if you are my friends and family finding yourself watching this, you've never said anything, you've never done anything to signify that this is how you actually feel about me. This is purely how I feel internally about myself, self-esteem wise and confidence wise. And if you are my friends and family and you are finding yourself watching this and you feel the need to validate to yourself and to me that that's not how you feel, and you need to reach out, to call, to message me, to send me a letter, I am going to promptly ignore those. If I answer the phone and you will say you appreciate me, I'm going to hang up, because really it's not doing me any good, because I'm still going to feel that way, because now it's going to feel like that you were just doing it because I talked about it on a video and it's just an empty gesture. So don't do it. I'm going to ignore your messages. So the reason why I find myself playing Tetris is that it fuzzes up my brain in a sense. I tunnel so hard into Tetris that any other thoughts I can feasibly come up with in my brain, in which I can watch TV, listen to music, read, all at the same time, and still think about these negative and unproductive thoughts, Tetris somehow cuts through all that, and I ignore everything and just focus on Tetris, and I don't think the way that I think. This is because I internalize everything. Everything I feel or do, I rarely feel, I show it outwardly. It's all in my stomach. I carry everything in my stomach. It's why my intestines just an absolute wreck, but it's just the way I am as a person. Using a video game to stuff this stuff down isn't the healthiest thing to do. I should probably get a therapist, but you need referrals for that, and I don't have a primary care physician, and trying to find one, especially now, is super stress-inducing for me because I don't want to go anywhere. So here we are. So inevitably, I gravitated towards Tetris on the NES to push those thoughts out of my mind while I'm with my family. Me playing Tetris was something my family did pick up on when we'd be all together at my grandparents' house. I would be in the other room and I could hear them say, "Where's Ted?" It's reassuring that they would want me around, or at least would like to know where I am, and they'd answer with, "He's in the other room playing Tetris." In the winter of 2018, when I was back home for Christmas, back at my grandparents' house, I finally realized why I always ended up playing Tetris while I was with my family. I remember it so vividly because I had come to that conclusion. I even made a statement about it on Facebook that I can't find anymore because I must have deleted it in my shame a day or two later because I was worried my family was going to see it. I remember my grandfather walking in, watching me play for 6 to 10 minutes, and him remarking, "Hey, you're pretty good at this." I don't remember what I said to him. I might not have said anything to him. And funnily enough, or really it's unfunnily enough, it's unfortunate. Unfortunately, as it would turn out, those would be the last words my grandfather ever said to me. He would later pass a couple months later in the new year of 2019. This is outside of things like goodbye, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, things like that. The last true words he said singularly to me and me alone. Something that not even my family knows about because at the time of his passing, it wasn't something I had even realized that it was the last thing he had said to me. Tetris for the NES isn't a perfect game by no stretch of the imagination. It's simple, and for me, it gets the job done. It is incredibly important to me, even though it might have hindered me developmentally wise, emotionally, or conversationally, but it is still important to me nonetheless. Tetris for the SNES is functionally the same game. Graphically, it's a little bit better, has a little kind of dynamic lighting towards it as they've added a little depth and 3D to the sprites, and the color palettes are switched. Unfortunately, one of the takeaways is they got rid of the fun ending screen with the Russian architecture and the space launch that follows. Instead, you have a 3D model of a Tetris piece to denote how well you did. It's a kind of a bummer when you see it as opposed to what it used to be. this is important is because Tetris for the SNES added something that is present in a lot of future iterations, which is a 2-player mode. And in this 2-player mode, it added the feature of sending junk to your opponent. Junk being lines that are sent after you have cleared a certain number of lines. This is usually one less than the lines you had just eliminated. So if you got rid of one line, it sends back 0. And if you did a Tetris, eliminating 4 lines, it would send 3 or 4 lines. Though these junk lines would be uniform, it all have the same column chunked out for you to easily eliminate. So if you just built down your own tower, you could feasibly just send a Tetris right back at them with a little bit of extra setup. But it ended up being a feature that is in future games, and it also showed who was the faster, more methodical player and could problem solve quicker. It's a unique way of playing Tetris. Also, what Tetris on the SNES introduced was this horrific noise. That is truly a no good, terrible, ear-grating noise. It's horrific. What that noise somehow does is create a Pavlovian effect of being both good and bad, especially in 2-player mode. That noise is the noise of when you get a Tetris, or when somebody gets a Tetris. Doesn't matter who. When you get a Tetris, that's the best thing you can do in the game. It's a Tetris. You've cleared the most lines. That's the objective of the game. It's the name of the game, Tetris. And so you get that noise. It kind of sounds good. It sounds a little bit good, right? It's not a bad noise, but it's not a terrific noise. It sounds okay. But on the flip side, if you're the other person on the receiving end, you hear that noise and you watch your own piece gently drift down one row at a time, thinking, I'm about to get fucked. And you do. Once your pieces connect, you get thrown up and you're just going, damn, that really fucking sucks. I include SNES version of Tetris because of that sound. The sound design in Tetris is crucial for the game. Rotating a piece has a very specific sound. Placing a piece has a very specific sound. Different lines being eliminated have very specific signs, and that noise is very specific to Tetris, and you know what it means. You know what's going to happen. It's very important that this sound design is very congealed into one uniform thing to give you a better experience. I hate to say it that the new Tetris doesn't have any of that. The sound is terrible. The music's awful. I truly hate that version of Tetris. I only played that version because I needed footage of the new Tetris to show the hold piece. And upon playing that game, I said, wow, this sounds awful. And on top of that, it plays worse than the old versions of Tetris. When you hard drop a piece, which is inputting, which is doing an input to slam the piece home, because that's exactly where you want it to be, there are a couple frames where it's not snapped in yet. It doesn't immediately snap, so you're pre-moving for the next piece because you know what that piece is, where you want it to go. You might have just fucked it up because you made a mistake, bud. You didn't really make a mistake. You didn't mean to move that block one over to the left or right because you knew where you wanted that next piece to go. The game did that. And now you have to fix a game's mistake. It sucks. I hate that version. The new Tetris got 9s as reviews. How did it get 9s? It's the worst version of Tetris that I've played ever. And here we are. I'm sure it got better reviews than Donkey Kong 64, which is insane to say, but here we are. That version of Tetris isn't sanctioned by me, the average Tetris player, but all these other versions are sanctioned by me because of its core gameplay and the sound design being so important to how you can experience Tetris. The music, the sound design can do is draw you in deeper and deeper into what is essentially just building blocks. And that noise is you doing the best or worst you can do in building blocks. My senior year of high school was a lot of fun. Granted, the majority of my high school life was fun. This was mainly because I didn't really have a care what my peers thought of me. And by peers, I mean people outside my friend circle, people just in my classes, in my grade, in my school. I didn't really care for their opinions about me because I had my group of friends and we had fun and I didn't really care. I know people look back at high school as their formative years, and sometimes they look back at it cringing and thinking it was why did I make that decision? Why am I wearing that? And I mean, times were different. That's probably thought was a good thing to do. Just accept it for what it is. You might not have been great, but it kind of made you who you are. It certainly happened for me. I'm not functionally any different than I am now. My high school best friend was once asked by his other group of friends why he hangs out with my group of friends, which is it's an incredibly rude question. It's insulting. What an insulting question to ask your friend. Why do you hang out with those people? That's incredibly rude. How would you feel if you found out your friend was asked why he hung out with you? Wouldn't that make you feel shitty about yourself? You're so lucky we didn't give a shit about what people thought about us. And that was what he said. He legitimately said, they don't care what you think. They're just having a fun time. And functionally, that's what I want. Like, hey, man, sorry you guys aren't having fun, and you have to ask why someone else wants to have fun. Incredibly rude question. What a bunch of pieces of shit. They probably don't even remember that or even think about it, but I remember. I remember so fucking much. We had fun. That's all that matters. And another way we had fun was in all of our classes with available computers, and we were all in because we were in a lot of classes together. We played Tetris, specifically on the website Tetris Friends. This is unfortunately a now debunked website that has now been relegated to a Facebook game, which, funnily enough, is how I first discovered Tetris Friends to begin with. In the early days of the algorithm TM by Facebook, they said,
Oh, this guy wants to play Tetris.
and somehow they were right. They were pretty accurate early on. They're terribly wrong now. I once got ads on Facebook for women's lingerie. And if you know anything about me, I have crippling anxiety when it comes to even talking to women I want to date. Because of this, I can't even record footage to show you of this game. If I want to show you anything from this game, it has to be ripped from YouTube from someone else playing this game. And unfortunately, there isn't anyone I can do a one-to-one showing of what exactly I'm talking about. You just have to take my word for it because there's no way for me to show you, unfortunately. What Tetris Friends was very unique in at that time was it had player lobbies in which you could have people join your lobby and you can play against them in real time. Though they did have a 2-player version like the SNES version. But I'm pretty sure those people weren't real people. It said they were real, but they weren't because they were terrible at Tetris. I smoked everyone. And I just thought to myself, there's no way these are real people because no one can be this bad. It started with my group of friends playing Tetris. We never had a full room, but still with our friends, and it was fun. Soon it grew to a lot of people in our graduating class. And when we were in classes together, you would hear cries of, Mitch, where's the invite to the lobby? And it would be a mad dash to fill up the 5 available slots left to play Tetris. I would clean up shop. I won disproportionately more than I ever lost. The only times I lost for a very unique specific case, or when my friends somehow would gang up on me knowing I was the target for them at that specific time. The arena worked like 2-player for the SNES. You would send lines of junk to people and eventually they'd get knocked out and there would be one less person to deal with. These lines would be seemingly sent at random, but you could see who you were targeting at any specific time. The one thing that is unique to Tetris Friends in the arena mode was that you could set an items list that you could pull from. These would be obtained when you cleared a very unique block that'd be found in, the Tetraminos. Some of these items were good, such as giving you all line blocks, clearing 4 of your lines, or pushing your tower all the way to the right to give you a nice clear well to get a Tetris. They also had bad things. By bad, I mean things you could hand out or give to your opponents to have them deal with, such as locking their piece rotation, increasing the drop speed of the pieces, or even making their playboard invisible for a second. But the best piece, because it was both a good and a bad piece, was the screen switch item. It was an item that was so unique because it was good for you and bad for someone else. Essentially, it's self-explanatory. It would swap screens with whoever was targeted at that time. You could trade out your unfavorable board for something that might be a little more manageable, and the other player having to deal with the mess that you have to deal with before. And for a while, that's how it was used. We used it how it was intended, which was just give them a bad board when you had a bad board. So one day, I decided to do something very funny with that item. What I did, because it was something I didn't know would work, at least I thought it would work, but I wanted to see what would happen because I thought it would have been unexpected, and it was. And we developed the meta that this was the meta. It's the most broken piece, and this is why. I would just slam the space bar, hard dropping pieces in a big line up as tall as I could without losing myself. And then, with this big middle finger I've created for these people, I would screen swap, or I would board switch, and they would get that middle finger and almost effectively lose immediately, because the effect happens once your piece lands, and then you get that new board, and you have this tall tower that you can't actually deal with immediately because you're unprepared for it, and your piece that's next immediately falls in, hits your top line, and you lose. I remember it happening so vividly because I had done it to my friend Sean first. And my friend Sean is a very expressive person at times. And when it happened, he slammed the desk and stood up and walked around going, "Who did that? Who did that to me?" And no one knew what he was talking about because they couldn't see it. It wasn't something they were aware of yet. Except for me, I was laughing. And he pointed at me with a fury. And he kind of laughed, going, "All right, I see what you did." And after the game, when they asked what had happened, I said, I switched screens with Sean after I had just hit the spacebar on my tower, and he lost immediately. Everyone laughed. And that was the meta we had created. If you get screen switch, what you're gonna do is just create a disaster and send it everyone's way, and they'd lose. That's why usually I lost. I would always laugh when it happened. I was never mad when it happened because it was a monster I had created, and the only thing I could do was laugh because it was always funny. It was always so funny because it was an incredibly rare item to get, and so when it happened, you would lose, and you just go, "Ah, God damn it!" But it was so funny, and it was such a beautiful, pure moment in Tetris where you think you're doing so good, and then all of a sudden your asshole friend's just like, "Ah, man, don't even think about it," and you're gone. It was innocent, I guess. It was funny. It was just pure chaos. That was the joy of Tetris Friends, this arena of 5 of your friends with items to mess you up. It was absolute chaos, and it was so much fun to just play in that manner, in a way that was so free of like how Tetris usually is. Eventually, you could kind of keep an eye on the 5 other boards because you could kind of see them in real time, but it'd be very laggy and hazy. And if you saw someone kind of build a bad tower, you could try to prepare yourself just in case it was you, but more often than not, you couldn't really deal with it. You would always lose. Sometimes it would work. I got it to work a couple times, but it rarely ever worked, and you would just lose automatically. Tetris Friends was such a unique experience in my life because it was a fad in my school that was so unique to just my school. Because I don't know many other high schools that were literally just playing Tetris against one another in a classroom. They probably do it now because of smartphones and all that, but back then that was such a different thing to have experience, especially to be at the center of a fad, which is something I've never experienced since, was so different. It was a special time to see Tetris really just bring people together who don't normally interact with one another to just play Tetris. And it was a shame to learn as I was writing the script and researching that I learned that Tetris Friends, the website, Tetris Friends Arena specifically, doesn't exist anymore. It was foregone. It's a relic of time. And it's sad that I can never feel that nostalgia ever again, because my experience is so unique to anyone else's experience of that game. Because a lot of people who play that game were like, just want to be good. I want to be good at Tetris and win. We were playing for fun. It was purely for fun. Of course, you wanted to win and be better than your friends, but we were playing because we had so much fun just laughing when certain things had happened. Tetris is fleeting, I guess, is what I'm really talking about in regards to Tetris friends. On June 6, 2019, E3 in Los Angeles was happening, and usually during these times, my friends and I watched the keynotes and presentations together to kind of clown and make fun at the games being shown and the awkward presentations at times. This is also even funnier when you consider the fact that a lot of these AAA games took years to develop and release. Let's ignore the elephant in the room of Cyberpunk 2077 being one of these games. Is it 2077 or 2777? Whichever number it is. Tetris, Cyberpunk, dumb idiot game that still doesn't work, was shown at an E3 and took years to come out. Was, lambasted. Let's not even get into it. They should have delayed it. They should have indefinitely delayed it until they were happy with the product release. What that sentence was going to be. Anyways, my friends and I would always clown at these games. I also remember The Division, Tom Clancy's The Division, being at I think my freshman year going into my sophomore year of college at E3, and then wasn't released until I was first year out of college. Well, that's insane. That took 4 years to come out. That game got a college degree. It got my college degree. Anyways, in 2018, Sony was once again having their conference, and they had a trailer for a game. Now, I can't surprise you or have a gotcha moment on what that game is. If you're following the format of this video, maybe I even did chapters. I don't even know how to do chapters, but maybe if I did, it'll say Tetris Effect. Me talking about Tetris Effect right there on the YouTube bar. And because I already said what the game was going to be, I can't trick you. It was for Tetris Effect. But what made this trailer so unique about Tetris was that it was so visually involved. It had images of stars in the shape of whales, in the shape of hieroglyphics, in the shape of a man on a horse, dolphins. It had so many unique shapes and images to it. It also included sometimes geometric block shapes with hard lines, but you still didn't really know what it was supposed to be. It also has a disembodied voice talking about this psychological experiment about a video game. So clearly, it was a game that is already out. Maybe it's a sequel, maybe it's something. It's about how people would play this game. Some experienced players, some people who have never played this game before. And once they would put that game down and close their eyes, they would have images of blocks.
Blocks. They all saw blocks falling through space, sometimes rotating or fitting neatly into empty spaces between other blocks.
The game was for Tetris Effect, based off the same name of that psychological experiment. I want to say it was like Harvard or something, but, war crimes. They do war crimes up in Harvard. At least when they leave Harvard, they do war crimes. I want to say it was Harvard, though. It sounds like something they'd figure out. The trailer will tell me. My interest was piqued. I was interested in this game because it was so different to have a Tetris game that was so visually involved, because Tetris is incredibly simple to look at. You have blocks falling, and you place those blocks, and you get rid of those blocks, and so on and so forth. And that's really it. But to have a board with strong visuals around it was an interesting direction to take. I'm sure it has some connection to the phenomenon of Tetris Effect in some form to help you idealize or visualize these shapes into something more. The game came out 4 months later, and I was stoked to play it. I remember playing it in my room with the lights off, and it was the first time I ever truly felt a sense of sensory overload. I cried. I still kind of cry when I play that game. I get goosebumps playing it. It's incredible. What Tetris Effect has is such unique stages. Each stage is so visually different and progresses as you get deeper and deeper into finishing that stage to go on to the next one. On top of that, the music is unique to each stage, built for that stage to a unique sound and atmosphere for it that fits the motif they're going for. And the rotations of the pieces are sound clips. They're beats that you can actually add to amplify the music with. You can lift up the music with how you play, making it a wholly unique experience for you to play. It is truly a work of art that is so emotionally draining, but also thriving at the same time. It culminates into the last stage, Metamorphosis, being a culmination of all the iconography you had seen throughout so many of these stages coming together to finish with this flourish of just this overwhelming sense of completeness and wholeness that you'd finished every stage from start to finish. It's a great build. It is a great release of some tension. You are build trying to finish your round of Tetris. It's beautiful. It's beautifully and masterfully done. It was so emotionally thriving for me that I even said as a joke, I don't understand real emotions now. I only understand emotions in Tetris Effect levels. And someone asked, where's the mood metrics to help me out? So 4 years later, the Tetris Effect mood matrix coming soon, or it's already out now. I don't know my release schedule. Tetris Effect might be a top 5 favorite game. It's not my favorite game, not by any stretch, because my favorite game is The Witcher 3, and that is so transcendently a different experience that I've ever played in a video game for so many reasons. But Tetris Effect is up there. It is contested to with so many other games. Well, not so many other games, a short list of games. But it is so different for why I love that game. When I was capturing footage for Tetris Effect, I cried again. I got the tingles. I don't know what ASMR is, nor do I really get it. It's a weird thing to admit in 2021, but here we are. At least I get it for Tetris Effect. I got it again for just watching the trailer. I got a tingling in the back of my head. I got goosebumps, the hair raised on my arms. I was engrossed in a way that not a lot of other things could engross me. Fuck. I think I finally understand what ASMR is. Three months after the release of Tetris Effect in February of 2019, Nintendo had a Nintendo Direct in which Nintendo announced a new game for the Nintendo Switch that was developed by Nintendo. It was free for anyone who had a Nintendo Switch. It was called Tetris 99, a battle royale of Tetris. Somehow they shoehorned battle royale into Tetris. I was bummed that there was a battle royale of Tetris because it just seemed they were cashing in on the idea of a battle royale. Though Tetris 99 was completely free to download, it was really only a way for people to use their newly minted Nintendo Online so they could use their subscription service for internet playability with, online. Tetris 99 effectively is a battle royale, as I stated, unfortunately. It is you versus 98 other people to be the best Tetris player in that lobby. I was nonplussed at the game because I was still on the such emotional high of experiencing Tetris Effect because I was such a single player boy at that time. I still am. I still fully enjoy single player games more than multiplayer games. And the experience I got from Tetris Effect was so fulfilling that I didn't really think I was going to enjoy Tetris 99. Still didn't stop me from playing Tetris 99 because just the thought of seeing how good I was comparatively to other people was very interesting to me. So, of course, I downloaded it. It was free. Who cares? And funnily enough, the couple weeks that I did play it, I won more than I lost. I think I was like 55% win rate at that point. I rarely finished outside of top 3. And then I stopped for a minute. And then a couple months later, I was at my friend's place, and he was like, look what I got on my Switch. Tetris 99. And I was like, yeah, give me the Tetris 99. And I was just like, in my mind, I was like, let's just play until I get a first place and call it a day. And it took 2 games for me to get first place. I don't know what I finished in the first game. Maybe I finished like 5th. Maybe I finished 10th. I can't remember. But I finished 1st the next game. And my friend commented that he could watch me play Tetris 99 for the rest of the day. We couldn't because that was the day we filmed our Pitch Perfect commentary video, I think. Or maybe we just watched Ocean's 11 that day for fun. Either we recorded a video or we just watched Ocean's 11 for fun. I can't remember. Anyways, it is sad for me to say that I didn't realize what Tetris 99 actually was at that time, outside of just a pure battle royale. It was Tetris Friends. It was the arenas that I had so lovingly enjoyed as a high schooler. I didn't realize it because it was just something I didn't think about. It wasn't in the forefront of my mind seeing it because Fortnite was such a news-heavy thing that battle royales were all anyone could think about. And it's now dawned on me, because I have written this script in such a manner where these games were written at the same time and said in the same breath, that I have realized this is just Tetris Friends arenas, the lobbies without items, which is what a lot of people have played, except you have 16.5 times more players you have to deal with instead. There are now other game modes in Tetris 99 that have appeared since I've played. There's sort of a ranking style for people who are very good at the game with a lot of Maximus wins. There's also a tag team mode where you're on a team with someone else. Things like that. I just kind of wish they had an items version of Tetris 99 because the idea of the chaos that is added with 98 other people is so appealing to me and would love to experience that feeling of that chaos again. It's a shame it's not there. Maybe it might be in the future, but who knows? Tetris 99 is actually Pajitnov's favorite iteration of Tetris. He actually truly enjoys the Switch, but that's not really a unique statement. A lot of people love the Switch. And it's about Tetris 99 specifically that I would like to think I know why he loves it so much. I'm actually wrong. I'll tell you what I thought it was in a minute, but I'd rather go over what Alexi's reason is for loving Tetris 99. Because mainly it's effective for what I thought it was, is emotionally stronger said at the end than here. So, anyways, here's why he loves Tetris 99. It is because it is the next logical step for Tetris. He believes that Tetris has, as a single-player experience, has been pushed as far as humanly could be. It's reached its forefront with Tetris Effect, essentially. That's what single-player Tetris is. And he wants to start transitioning Tetris into an esport, which is a reasonable understanding given the market share that esports can usually have on certain games. Doubly so that it actually draws in a new crowd to play the game or people to just watch. A lot of the games we watch, sports, esports, otherwise, are things a lot of the times we don't play anymore. We kind of aren't involved. We just watch at this point and enjoy as fans. Unfortunately for Tetris, there's already a competition, a competitive scene for Tetris. It is specifically for the NES version because that is the purest form of Tetris. It is the hardest form of Tetris. And these people have pushed Tetris to its limits more so than humanly thought possible before. I watch these people and it is way beyond the scope of how I could play. I know I gassed myself up as a good, great Tetris player. I'm not. I'm mediocre at best, just lucky enough to have friends that are worse than me at Tetris so I could win or just impress them by playing Tetris 99. When I was capturing footage for the NES version, I wanted to get the last animation of the palace lifting off because that is the ultimate animation you can get for Tetris. I don't think I've ever gotten it before So I wanted to push myself to get it, and I was very relieved when I did, because I finally got what I wanted. I set a goal in Tetris, which is something I never do. I just sort of played for the enjoyment of playing Tetris. For Tetris 99, while capturing footage, I wanted to at least get one victory, at least one first place. Tetris Maximus is what they call it. It took me a long time to get it. I think a long time. I really don't know. Time's a man-made structure. It's a flat circle. And also, I've been stuck in my apartment for a year at this point. It took me 3 days to get a Tetris 99 Tetris Maximus. It was a struggle. I was getting rinsed in so many games. I was finishing below 50 so often. I was being terrible. And I don't know why. I didn't know why until... I still don't know why, actually. I don't know why I said until. That's a hanging word that I have no conclusion for. When I finally did get a Tetris Maximus, I was ecstatic. I stood up and exclaimed, I yelled and slammed my chest. Outside of these sentences that I wrote about me playing these for goal purposes, I didn't even know if I was going to need that footage of both the palace rising up and me getting a Tetris Maximus. I just wanted that footage just in case. Obviously, I've created a situation in which I need that footage, though. That was captured before I had even written the script. I don't really outline my scripts. This was written 3 days after I had finished my script, or what I thought my script was finished, its finished form. I can obviously why Pajitnov wants it to be an esport, because the foundation and framework are there. It's a very strong structure you can implement an esports system into. I just wished he noticed the hard work this dedicated fan base of people playing the NES were putting into creating strategies specifically for the NES version, pushing human possibilities in Tetris. It was they didn't even think you could go to level 30, let alone beyond that. They didn't even think you could max out your score, but it was done multiple times after the first time it happened. It's incredible. The growth of a niche small community who are so dedicated to the game is such a powerful community and driving force that I wish he embraced that so much earlier. What I was really hoping for Tetris 99, for being Pajitnov's favorite game, was that it was the culmination of everything he'd ever wanted in a video game. It was Tetris coming full circle for him. People playing his game, people seeing how other people played his game, people seeing how other people thought and problem solved in his game. It was everything he had wanted, people enjoying his game, something he always stated was his goal at the end of the day with Tetris. Tetris Effect is the culmination of Tetris as a whole, as a single-player experience, as a breathing entity that has grown so much in the 30-some-odd years. Tetris 99 is the next logical step in its evolution to what it can be and how it can reach more people. I sort of wish I could find some words about Pajitnov talking about Tetris Effect, both the psychological effect and the game, but there aren't any. He just seems so happy with Tetris that he lets people create these variations and just wants to see where it goes from there. And Tetris 99 is that next stepping stone to see where Tetris goes, how it connects people to one another, how people can observe one another. His only real goal for Tetris, finally seeing some light at that end of the tunnel 37 years later.